Good morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're watching this. I wanted to start this vlog off with a quote from The Simpsons that a town with money is a lot like a mule with a spinning wheel. Danged if you knew how he got it, and danged if I screwed it up. The bottom line, trying to keep up with the news these days is like trying to hammer an egg to the wall. It always gets away from you, and you always end up trying to catch up with it. The news of the day, the latest breaking news of the day is that the assassin, domestic terrorist, alleged Vance Boelter has been arrested and charged, taken alive. Surprisingly, that many people were predicting, he might not be taken alive. He has been captured alive, and now the objective must be to make sure that Vance Boelter doesn't get Epstein. And breaking out of NPR, reporting that the suspect in the shooting of two Minnesota lawmakers has been captured and charged. Law enforcement in Minnesota have arrested the man wanted in the attack early Saturday morning that killed. An attack did not kill. This is like passive description. This man murdered a lawmaker and her husband. They didn't get killed. It didn't result in the killing of. He allegedly murdered somebody. Two people. Vance Boelter apprehended Sunday night after what Brooklyn Police Chief Mark Bruley called, quote, the largest manhunt in the state history. Bruley said at a Sunday night press conference that officers had been searching the area of Boelter's property near the town of Green Isle when one thought they saw him, quote, running into the woods, end quote. After about an hour and a half, with the help of multiple SWAT teams and a state patrol helicopter, authorities closed in on him and were, quote, able to call him out to us. He was ultimately taken into custody in the field, Bruley said, adding that Boelter was armed at the time. You will take this story with the requisite degree of caution that it requires. Early information, fog of war, and some people are going to say armed, dangerous, and they managed to take him alive without incident. This is what is being reported. Boelter was the subject of a days-long manhunt, yada, yada, yada. Let's just see what he was charged with, because that is the most important part right now. Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Superintendent Drew Evans told reporters on Sunday that Boelter has been charged with the Hortmans murders as well as the shooting of the Hoffmans. They are expected to survive. He said the FBI and U.S. Attorney's Office are reviewing whether to bring additional federal charges. My recommendation would be, bring federal charges and take this out of the jurisdiction of the state of Minnesota for reasons that might be very, very obvious. You will recall that there was a manifesto allegedly found in the suspect's vehicle, along with No King's pamphlets in the suspect's vehicle. A manifesto which people on the left were saying contained the target list of Democrat and pro-abortion names in order to politically affiliate this suspected terrorist assassin. It seems that they're changing their tone a little bit. Breaking today, I think it's a semantic game with the term manifesto, but they're not quite calling it a manifesto anymore. And this is why I think this needs to be taken into the jurisdiction of the FBI, because I don't think anybody's going to trust what's coming out of the state of Minnesota as if they might have something to cover up here. We're going to get to that in a second, but for now, this is the clip that came from initially.
Can you identify the potential motive here? It has been widely reported that this hit list contained names of people who are abortion rights supporters. And also, can you please release the names of the two other targeted victims who were fortunate to get away?
As I said, with respect to the other two potential victims, I think it's up to them whether they want to publicly identify themselves. As I said, it wouldn't surprise me if they do. They're elected officials, but that's their right. Obviously, they may have families and children and privacy interests that they need to sort through. So I'll let them do that. With respect to the potential motive, let me say this. There's been a lot of press coverage and speculation and discussion of a manifesto. I've seen nothing like a Unabomber-style manifesto.
It's very interesting. There hasn't been speculation about a manifesto. It was being reported by authorities that there was a manifesto found in the vehicle, and some people were skeptical of that at the time. And notice how he qualifies it as a Unabomber-type manifesto?
Like a Unabomber-style manifesto.
Well, we're not looking for necessarily a mini novella here. It wasn't the general public using the term manifesto. It was, to the best of my recollection, after 3 days of following this now, authorities stating they found a manifesto. There seems to be a wordplay for what's being considered a manifesto right now. But the bigger question is, why isn't it being released? Typically, when, quote, manifestos are not released to the public, it's because the content of such manifesto might negate the narrative that needs to be or wants to be pushed by authorities, as we saw in the Christian school killing. The manifesto, which took a FOIA request in order to be released, or a leak to be released, because it didn't quite fit the proper narrative of what people wanted from manifestos. Let this play out for a few more seconds.
In his writings, he had many, many notebooks full of plans, lists of names, surveillance, efforts that he took to surveil and locate the home addresses and family members' relationships with these elected officials. But I have not seen anything involving some sort of political screed or manifesto that would clearly identify what motivated him. Obviously.
Oh, that's very interesting. All right. So we don't have any political creed that would clearly identify motivation, despite a number of fake news propagandists spreading very much that same type of, he was a far right-wing extremist, MAGA supporter, Trump voter, etc. You don't have a manifesto, but we do have a list of people, surveillance, things that he was doing, like a diary, also known as a manifesto of sorts, depending on how you define it. We're getting conflicting information right now from the authorities themselves, and it's mildly disconcerting. It's the fog of war, and information is bound to change as this progresses. But some people are going to be very skeptical of any information coming out of the state of Tim Walz, Minnesota, where Tim Walz definitively, objectively appointed the suspected assassin, suspected murderer, suspected domestic terrorist, appointed him to the Workforce Governance Board, which worked on such things as racial equity and handicap equity. That is undeniable right now. There seems to be some disagreement, some questioning as to whether or not his wife, Jennifer Boelter, the woman who was taken into not custody but detained yesterday, found with guns, at least a passport, not guns, ammunition, cash, and a passport in her vehicle with other Boelter family members. Now, some people are suggesting that it is not the same Jennifer Boelter who apparently interned for Tim Walz back in 2010. I do my best to get everything accurate, or at least to the best of the information available at the time. And the information available at the time, and I'll show you the receipts because I'm not convinced by this very vague blanket denial, was that Jennifer Boelter interned for Tim Walz in 2010. Vance Boelter, who many think are related by marriage, was appointed by Governor Walz in 2019 after having been appointed by the governor in 2016. And they said, oh, what a coincidence. Someone on Twitter replies to me and says, his wife was not a Tim Walz intern. This has been debunked. It was a different woman with the same name. And here it looks like it's coming from, I don't know what outlet it is. I want to say the Dallas Star, that says, did Boelter's wife intern for Walz? There is also speculation on social media that Boelter's wife, Jenny, was an intern for Walz. A spokesperson for the governor said that's not true. The Walz intern is a different person who appears to be married to someone else, the spokesperson said. They said the Tim Walz spokesperson, the Tim Walz who might have a bit of ass to cover right now after having appointed the apparent suspected assassin terrorist, might have his ass to cover. His spokesperson is saying, it appears to be someone else who's married to someone else, and just take our word for it. But this caused me to be a little bit concerned because I do pride myself not on getting everything right, but doing my best with the available information. And if I get something wrong, to recognize, correct, retract, and make sure everybody knows. I, for a second, thought, holy crap, I must have screwed up somewhere. And I went back to double check my work. And I've archived these links now just in case they decide to memory hole any of these. This is from the State Storm website. Back in the day, legistorm.com, archived now, and it's in my tweets so that it's ratified for history. Former Rep. Tim Walz, Democrat, Minnesota first, ran for office, yada, yada, yada. And then we scroll down here and we see Jennifer Boelter, who interned from whatever month the 10th is, I think that's September, October to December, was paid $2,533. That is Jennifer Boelter right here. We are being told right now that no, it's just a different Jennifer Boelter. Take our word for it, because it's not like Tim Walz has been known to lie or fudge the truth when it comes to other things. And then you can find also how much she was paid, but you can't seem to get much more information than this. Salary data of Jennifer Boelter, congressional staffer. And you have the dates here, October to December 2010. And you can click on the numbers, but it doesn't give you much information. $3,566.66. And that's a lot of sixes that I know people are going to observe. So if I got that wrong, and it just so happens to be another Jennifer Boelter who was an intern for Tim Walz in 2010, the same Tim Walz who appointed the Vance Boelter, who happens to be married to a Jennifer Boelter in 2019, who happens to be the suspected alleged terrorist assassin of a lawmaker out of Minnesota, the only Democrat lawmaker who voted with Republicans to defund illegal aliens. If it's just a big coincidence, I promise you I will correct it. But forgive me for being skeptical at the so-called fact check that Tim Walz spokesperson says, no, don't worry. It's just another intern who happens to be named Jennifer Boelter. And we're just going to end with some more people who, try to politicize it. No lie with Tyler Cohen. And yet somehow every single thing this pathological bald-faced liar says is a lie. And there it is, says no lie with BTC. The Minnesota assassin who shot Democratic lawmakers voted for Donald Trump and was a strong Trump supporter, according to his best friend. If you've seen that video, you'll have some questions about his best friend who's wearing a Papa John's shirt, who's reading texts off his phone but not showing it to journalists, who's saying how he knows his best friend voted. I don't know how my best friends voted, people. But
we even asked about Mr. Boelter's political affiliations, and David Carlson, once again, his roommate and best friend, known him since fourth grade, did say Boelter voted for Trump and that he was a strong supporter. We even asked about...
His best friend says he voted for Trump and was a strong supporter. So strong, you don't see any signs on the doors, signs on the front lawn, yada, 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 but you want to go find out what the evidence is. I have not been able to verify the authenticity of this screen grab, which was provided or shown to me on Twitter as if to suggest that it's definitive evidence that Vance Boelter was a Trump supporter, MAGA, Republican far-right extremist. Someone who posts this says, here's a screenshot of his voter registration. Take it for what it's worth. I don't know where this screenshot came from, but as you can see from it, it says allegedly Vance Luther Boelter was a registered Republican back in 2004. Registered Republican, 2004. And here you have party Republican. It doesn't tell you when. And we lose dates here where we see voting records in 2022, but no longer seeing any party affiliation. And I do question whether or not the individual proved the exact opposite point that they thought they were proving, in that, what does this screenshot prove? I'm not seeing any direct link to it, but set that aside. Assume it's accurate. News has been reporting that he was a registered Republican in the early 2000s. And I say, so you think that the fact that he was allegedly a registered Republican in the early 2000s, before apparently his wife or another Jennifer Boelter by some fluke interned for Tim Walz, before he was appointed to the so-called bipartisan committee on this board, which worked on things like racial equity, very, very far-right MAGA Trump policies, whether or not you think that proves that he might have had a political shift since the early 2000s. It's interesting when people want to get to the conclusions they want to get to, they pick the evidence that they need to get to that conclusion, even if that evidence temporally contradicts the theory that they have. Yeah, he was a registered Republican before he started working with Tim Walz bipartisan governance board, before his wife allegedly interned with Tim Walz, before he might have had something of a political change that landed him in the Tim Walz far left Democrat ecosphere of Minnesota. So that's where things are right now. The amazing thing, by some fluke happenstance, they've captured him alive. They're going to charge him. They need to keep him alive. They need to make sure that he does not Epstein himself. And the FBI federally needs to get involved, because nobody trusts a damn thing coming out of Minnesota, except for the fact that you can trust that you can't trust what's coming out of Minnesota. If you are still watching this and you haven't subscribed and turned on notifications, I don't know what more I have to do in terms of hard work following the truth to get you to subscribe, turn on notifications, give it a thumbs up, drop a comment in the comment section. Viva Fry on Rumble, Viva Fry on Twitter, vivabarneslaw.locals.com on our above average, amazing locals community. Take care of yourselves, people. Now you know your vlog. Peace out. Booyah.